The rise of American slavery. Rome, as the saying goes, was not built in a day, nor did slavery in America come into existence quickly. Slavery's rise in America occurred gradually over the 17th and 18th centuries, or from about 1600 to 1800. To understand slavery's beginnings in America, one must look back to the history of human bondage in Africa. Since the beginning of time, slaves probably have labored in Africa. They helped build the pyramids in ancient Egypt, and for centuries, Islamic slave traders trafficked West Africans across the desert of North Africa to supply labor shortages in countries along the southern edge of the Mediterranean Sea. This trans-Saharan slave trade was thriving and well established by the time European sea captains and traders cruised down the Atlantic coast of Africa in the 16th century. The Voyages of Christopher Columbus in 1492 inaugurated the transatlantic slave trade that soon eclipsed the slave trade across the Sahara Desert. When the Italian explorer brought back indigenous Taino Indians from a Caribbean island, which was modern-day Dominican Republic, and presented to his Spanish patrons, he encouraged European monarchs to establish overseas colonies that would produce sugar and other agricultural commodities that consumers back home were demanding. Europeans originally eyed the native inhabitants of these lands as laborers in the sugar fields they hoped to create. But when European diseases like measles, smallpox, and yellow fever decimated indigenous Americans, Europeans looked to Africa to supply the growing demand for laborers. Over the next 400 years, more than 10 million Africans were enslaved and forcibly transported across the Atlantic Ocean to colonies in North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. The first Africans, there were about 20 of them, in early English America landed in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. Virginia was the first English colony in America, and tobacco was its cash crop. To attract settlers to this new colony on the Chesapeake Bay, planters and government officials relied on white indentured servants, not slaves, to harvest tobacco. Enslaved by the Spanish and sold to the Virginia planters, these 20 Africans became indentured servants, completed their terms of service, usually 7 years, then they became free men and women. Like other Virginia servants who completed their labor contracts, that's the indenturedness, these free Africans in America obtained 50 acres of land, became tobacco planters themselves, and even obtained indentured servants of their own. First in Virginia, and then on Maryland's eastern shore, a free class of black farmers and planters emerged. The indentured servitude system in Virginia and Maryland attracted so many settlers that before long, colonial governments in the Chesapeake could not continue giving 50 acres of land to ex-servants who had completed their indentures. By the 1670s, land was becoming scarce, that ex-servants had to take a rain check and wait for their land. Anger among landless ex-servants ran so high that in 1676, Nathaniel Bacon led a rebellion against Virginia's government, demanding that officials seize protective Native American lands and give them to white settlers. Bacon and his followers burned Jamestown to the ground and nearly toppled Virginia's government, but were eventually defeated by the colony's militia and troop reinforcements from England. To avoid another rebellion of land-hungry ex-servants, planters and Virginia officials gradually began to shift to slave labor. After years of depending upon voluntary servitude, the Chesapeake colonies switched to involuntary slavery based on race. This system of racial slavery, gradually adopted in the years following Bacon's rebellion, implied that to be a slave means that you are black, and to be black means that you are a slave. Other English agricultural colonies, like North Carolina, South Carolina, and later Georgia, also adopted racial slavery to expand the production of tobacco, indigo, and rice. As racial slavery spread from Virginia through the agricultural South after 1700, the number of Africans entering America increased substantially and continued through the 18th century. Northern colonies also enslaved Africans, but because staple crops could not grow there, slaves never numbered more than 7% of the population. Approximately 430,000 Africans came to the 13 American colonies, and the slave population of the United States over time grew almost tenfold through slave births. Although many African Americans gained freedom after the American Revolution, from 1776 to 1783, slavery in the United States grew even stronger after Alabama and Louisiana. On the eve of the Civil War, more than 4 million African Americans were enslaved in the American South. The United States became a slaveholding republic in which blacks were owned by others. As human property, slaves had their life and work dictated by their masters, who perpetuated these inequities for generations. Slavery in America became so widespread that, in the end, only a civil war could end it.